Do you know the story of the man who helped give Burkina Faso its name? This is the story of Thomas Sankara. Born in 1949 in what was then known as French Upper Volta, after finishing school he continued his education, where he came into contact with more young intellectuals like himself, who were all collectively hoping for a better living situation for the people of the country. The 60s were a tumultuous time for the territory. After several decades of French rule, Upper Volta finally became fully independent in 1960. The first president, Maurice Yameogo, was corrupt and quickly moved to establish complete power, banning other political parties. In 1966, he was deposed by the military, continuing the economic and social instability. During this period, Thomas was learning more about socialism, neoliberalism, and more. But also, while continuing his military studies, he studied agriculture, taking avid interest in helping to improve the lives of those who worked the land. In the early 70s, Thomas was deployed in some of the wars that Upper Volta was involved in, and his military prowess would gain him attention. But he used his newly found platform to denounce the wars and call for civil end to conflicts. Across his military career, he witnessed many more eye-opening moments. One of the most significant was the uprising of the people to topple Madagascar's government. He saw again and again the strife of the regular person around him, and he wanted nothing more than to change the state into one that would help them rather than add to their pain. In 1983, Thomas was chosen for a newly formed party, the Council for the Salvation of the People, or CSP. Though his socialist principles were popular for the people, they were not so popular for some members of the CSP, who were still pretty conservative. A few months later, this led to his arrest. However, only 2 months later, his longtime friend and comrade, Blaise Compaoré, was part of a group that broke him out of jail and staged a coup d'etat, which resulted in Thomas being named the new president. Within the first month, he gave a speech to let the people know his intentions, to turn the nation into an anti-imperialist democracy that will stamp out any corruption. On the anniversary of him becoming president, he renamed the country from Upper Volta to Burkina Faso, the land of the upright people in their native languages of Dioula and Mossi. His first mission upon becoming president was helping those most in need. He saw 2 million people vaccinated for polio, meningitis, and measles. He brought the infant mortality rate down by 5%, and he also reforested millions of trees. Along his tenure, he's followed his words, also working to better the access of the everyday people to healthcare, and in general, continuing with the separation of the nation from its former colonizer, France. But many people in power were not happy with his commitment to this. And the reality was, the country's economy was still struggling since its liberation from France. This would lead to a sad end for Thomas. In 1987, Thomas would be betrayed by one of his former comrades in a coup, which killed him and 12 of his people. What came after was a dictatorship that trampled over many of Thomas's policies, erasing a lot of his hard work. It took decades to bring the guy to justice, but in 2022, Blaise, the perpetrator of the coup, was sentenced to life in prison for the murder of Thomas. And this year, Thomas's body has been exhumed from the unmarked grave they unceremoniously buried it in and taken to a mausoleum to rest peacefully.